Is now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline, ESPN NFL analyst and the father of BYU football player Bo Hoge, Merril Hoge. Merril, nice to have you back on the program.
Good, always nice to be with you guys, man. As soon as you say fall there, I know you guys are thinking basketball and football, but I'm thinking elk hunting in Utah. It's the first thing that popped in my head when I said that. I missed that, man.
Well, you got to get your priorities straight, right?
That's right. Well, you got to have different phases to your life, right?
Absolutely.
Can't just be all football.
Hey, I want to bring up something that you said after week one for BYU football when you called Jamal Williams a factor back against Arizona, and I like that phrasing. He's been slowed the last two games against good defensive fronts in Utah and UCLA, but along with Jamal Williams, what is your overall impression of BYU football after 3 games this season?
Well, listen, I love what Ty Detmer's doing, and I think it's hard for a fan to truly appreciate how hard it is to create. I mean, all these layers of learning. You know, you're teaching kids technically in some phases how to actually play the game of football, and I don't think people can appreciate, you know, how little some guys do know coming out of spread-type offenses. You know, I can't stand them. I don't like them. I think there's no great value in them. I don't think you teach kids how to play the game, and there's no control for them. You know, I just use the huddle for an example. I mean, there's so much value to huddling up. More things are discussed and filtered through and figured out in the huddle with players than at any other part during a football game. And to rob them of being able to do that, which really kind of leads me to believe that, you know, it's, honestly, coaches, it's more about them than it is about the kids and teaching them. But, you know, there's all this learning going on. You're learning a new offense. You're trying to, you know, create a chemistry together. But then you got to face an opponent. And, you know, you just mentioned, you know, the front sevens for Utah and UCLA. You know, how you game plan and how you try to find success for your guys is not always that easy. And keep in mind, like, Ty's still figuring out, what do my guys do well? You know, how do I mold my system into what they do well? And that's not easy. You don't do that overnight. It takes time. So, I mean, I love what they're doing and the direction they're going. I mean, would you like to see Jamal a bigger part of it? You know, maybe a staple. On the outside, I could say, and listen, I really think I know a lot about football, but I will be the first one to say I don't study college football. You know, I don't know how good Utah was or UCLA. So, you know, I hate to sit there and go, oh, you should do this, you should do that, without knowing what they do. But the direction they're going, I use Bo's temperature a lot for. I mean, he loves what they're doing. I mean, and they're excited about what they're doing. In fact, I was just talking to Taysom, texting back and forth here this week because I know they're in D.C. and. You know, and he was like, man, you know, this week we really got better. You know, so, and, you know, when players feel that, and that is, I mean, I almost feel for them in a way because, you know, they are learning. And, you know, getting better here in week 4 is not a weird thing with the new system. Now, if you've been in something for 3 years and you're like better, that would seem weird, but it made a lot of sense to me when he said that, you know, getting better, we're understanding what we're doing. And I think you'll see a better offensive performance against WVU Saturday.
That's certainly the hope after some of the struggles through the first 3 weeks. But BYU hasn't had any kind of warm-up. They've just jumped right into it against Power 5 teams, yeah. 2 of 3 on the road. Now they go for a 3rd road game in the first 4 weeks across the country. What kind of performance do you expect this week from BYU against West Virginia?
Well, you know, just talking to Bo, and listen, this is all hearsay. I haven't been able to watch them. You know, but just listening to kind of how they talk and how they feel, I'm expecting a good performance from them offensively. And, you know, about week 4, honestly, if you group, like I use the NFL for this, there's a first, second, and a third quarter during the season, and they're in 4-game increments. BYU's in their 4th game. So this is kind of where, you know, you have a good sample of who you're going to be or what you need to do at this point. So what I'm thinking is in the game Saturday, we're going to find out what they're going to probably be like from here going on. You know, they're going to whatever they're establishing, it'll be in this game, and they'll keep building from this point on. Because I think now you got a good feel for what everybody does, who are we, and how can we be most successful. And I think you'll see it Saturday.
ESPN NFL analyst and former NFL running back Merril Hoge with us on BYU Sports Nation. I want to go back to Jamal Williams and what you expect him to do behind an offensive line that in a lot of ways is young and still learning a brand new offense.
Well, listen, some of the runs he had, against Arizona, I mean, just his runs, their instincts and their gifts. And you can tell he has great skills. And I know he got nicked up too. And see, that's another factor too. A guy gets nicked up. It isn't like you can go feed him the ball a bunch of times. You can't do it for him. He's hurt. But say he's healthy. Listen, that week I think you got to see a lot of the featured runners in college football. And listen, from skill set I saw on television, I was like, that's as good as anybody I saw in the country running the football. And that was the two runners in LSU. And I think Wisconsin has a good runner too, if I remember right. Because they were kind of featuring those guys. Like, shoot, I'd throw Jamal in that group. Based on what I saw that day and how he ran and how hard he ran and the moves he has, and his love for the game. Shoot, I would keep him in a category like that and feel very good about that.
That's quite the compliment for him. A lot of the rhetoric this week in Provo and around BYU has been about the quarterback situation. Some people wanting a change at that position, BYU naming Taysom Hill the starter. So in your opinion, what would it take to merit a change at the quarterback spot for BYU?
I don't even want to say this because I don't want to ever it's only an injury. You don't want anybody to get hurt, but that's the only way I think you do it. Fans get so impatient, and I get that. I get you want to win. I can just tell you this, from a leadership perspective, where Kalani Sitake sits, if you reacted with the emotion of a fan, he'll probably be in that fan base pretty quick, and he won't be a coach very long. And I've had a lot of conversations with him, and I'll tell you this, that guy is going to be a fabulous head coach. I mean, and what people forget about, too, Kalani Sitake is the head coach of BYU. This is his first year of ever being a head coach, so he does not even know how to technically really be a head coach. You learn to be a head coach by being a head coach. The Rooneys have taught me that since I was a player to today in how they run the Steeler organization, how they have chosen to pick head coaches. I'll give you an example and a story. Joe Green, when Chuck Noll retired, Joe Green came to me and asked me if I would go talk on his behalf to Mr. Rooney about him being the next head coach. I was like, absolutely. We love Joe. I'd love that Joe be our next head coach. So I went in there, talked to Mr. Rooney, set a meeting up with him, sat him down. I said, listen, I always want to talk to you a little bit about Joe being our next head coach. He gets up from his desk, he walks over, and he shuts the door. And I was like, oh, my gosh, what have I done here? So he comes back to the desk, and he said, hey, Merril, I appreciate you coming in here. We love Joe, but I'll never do that to Joe Green. He's like, it would never be fair to Joe based on Chuck, and the relationship was there. And he's like, we need to start over young, and that's what we're going to do. So that's why they draft Bill Cowher. Okay, Bill Cowher retires. Now I'm at ESPN, and I remember that story, and everybody was talking about Ken Wisenhunt was on the staff. He'll be the net head coach. I'm like, oh, boy, I'm running if I'm Ken Wisenhunt because that ain't happening. Well, they draft Mike Tomlin the next head coach. I'm talking to Art Rooney at training camp, and he adds the other layer to this. He's like, Merril, one of the reasons we went with young coaches and young head coaches is we feel like we got the right guy. They have to learn to be head coaches, and you got to be patient with them. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to learn from that. But if you got the right guy, that's what you do. And I think actually, of all the college programs, now the NFL, I mean, they stand alone for how they've done that. And they have won. And there's a great the thing that's most important behind that, there's consistency. And as long as it's good consistency and it's growing good consistency, you stay with it. BYU, I've kind of done that, I think, in the college perspective a lot. But you've got a guy who could be special. I really believe that. I think when I listened to him after they lost the Utah game, what Bo told me after the game of how Kalani Sitake handled that, and just Bo's perspective and the energy he had for that. And he goes, I love this guy. I love this guy. He used some other word, too, and I can't think of it because it was a bigger word than I know how because Bo's smarter than me. But it's like I understood it. I was like, God, that's what you got to resonate with these kids. You got to make them all want to play for you, and he does that. Only an injury because everybody's learning. Everybody's growing. I think it's actually taken from the overall perspective, he's played really pretty well based on all of the things you got to look at versus just a win and a loss. I think he's played good football, and I think you'll see really good football tomorrow night.
Merril, fantastic stuff. We wish you safe travels, and I know you're a busy man, so we certainly appreciate the time. Thanks, man.
Man, I love talking BYU football. You guys call me anytime. If I'm not on, I'll be happy to talk to you guys, all right?
You got it, brother. Thanks, Merril.
See you guys.
What a fantastic story from Merril Hoge
I love
on the
having him
Deseret
on the
First
show.
Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future. And